Good afternoon, Facebook. Brother Perry Williams. Sorry I didn't get a chance to do something this morning with you guys. Hope you guys have a chance to tune in or watch it. If you see it's on and you know somebody else that missed it, pass it on to them. But we're going to get in chapter 3 today of Daniel. But first I want to tell you what Daniel's about. Daniel chapter 3 is actually a children's story. But it's also a past, something that happened in the past is going to happen in the future. Now, we just got done with the Revelation Bible study, and we talked about the one world government, the Antichrist, the spirit of Babylon, and the destruction of Babylon. Well, this is where it all started. Babylon has taken over the Jews. We talked about yesterday about Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Well, chapter 3 is about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, one of the most famous children Bible stories. And today I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do this outside. It's such a beautiful day. I hope that you get a chance to get out and tune in also, or get out and do something out in God's beautiful land today. Now, like I said, this is a children's story, but it's got roots that it's got prophetic future events in it too. Now, yesterday we talked about this dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. And this dream saw this statue, had a head of gold, arms and chest of silver, belly of bronze, and legs of steel, and feet and toes partially of steel and partially of clay mixed together. And then a huge stone was cut out by nobody's hands, and it fell on the feet of the statue, and it crushed it all at once. And then the stone filled the earth like a giant mountain, and there was no end to that kingdom. The Bible explained that that's talking about world kingdoms. All right, now we've not had a world government since Rome was, almost 2,000 years ago. But we've been talking about these Revelation studies that in the future we're going to see more of, we're going to see a one world government come up, and we're seeing the effects of it. We're seeing the very beginnings of it. So I want to get into Daniel chapter 3 because this is exactly what's going to happen during the time of the Antichrist, on that 7-year tribulation time. So Daniel 3 basically starts out, King Nebuchadnezzar decides he's going to build this statue, and he made it and put it on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. But then he did this. He summoned all of his officials, his governors, his satraps, his prefects, treasurers, judges, all the very important men of his domain, and ordered them to come for the base of the opening of this statue, okay, to its dedication. Well, it goes on. They were all summoned there and everything. And then a proclamation went out. This proclamation basically said this. It said that whenever you hear these sounds of these flutes and on these lyres and all these other things, it says what you're going to do, all the people and everybody, you're going to bow down and worship the statue that he had put up. Well, as the story goes on, that's exactly what they did. You know, this is exactly what's going to happen in the future during the time of the Antichrist reign. Let me give you an example of what Satan's final world government is going to look like. It's going to look like a lot like King Nebuchadnezzar in Babylon, and this statue that's going to be created and stuff. I'll give you the kind of idea what this religion of this Antichrist will be like. One, it'll be satanic. People will actually worship Satan, okay, during that time. All right? And also it'll be humanistic. They will also worship the Antichrist, which is that man that will be raised up. He is the exact opposite of Christ, and everything that Christ stands for, he stands against. But it'll also be universal. It means all world religions. And I'm talking about the future right now. This is what happened in Babylon also in chapter 3. It'll be all, it's just everybody being enclosed. It'll be also every world religion except Christianity will be a part of this. And then it'll be there'll be all kinds of miracles being done during that time, and which also you're going to see in today's story that there was miracles that was actually done. It'll be pagan worship, the worship of that false beast, okay? And it's also going to be a very cruel religion because it's going to end up killing anybody that doesn't fall down and worship the image of the beast. This is all found in Revelations. Well, Babylon comes to an end during that time, but it says that in the future, in our near future, I really believe, is when this Babylon, the spirit of Babylon, just like this old Babylon world government, we're going to rise up and God's going to destroy it. So they made this decree, and it says whoever does not worship this image, whoever doesn't fall down and worship it, they'll be cast in the fiery furnace. Well, there were some very rich people, and they were astrologers, and they didn't like the Jews anyway. They didn't care for them. They didn't like that the king had set them over things. So they went to the king, and they buttered him up and said, "Oh, king, live forever." He said, "Didn't you make a decree that if anybody did refuse to worship this statue, that that they would be thrown in the fire furnace? And he said, I did. And they go, well, there are some people that you put over your land, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They're refusing to worship. So King said, what? So he had them brought to him. Now, he really liked these guys. He put them in charge of a lot of things. And Daniel was over the whole providence of Babylon also. But these three men were named out specifically, all right, that they would not fall down and worship this image. Now, they were probably about 30 years old at this time. There's some years that passed by from chapter 2 to chapter 3. Chapter 1, they were probably about 13, 14 years old. Then they had some training done, schooling, and probably by the time they're early teenagers or late teenage years, and they began put in charge of things. And they're probably around 30 years old this time, according to what we can read and find in history about it. So, but they're refusing to worship this beast. So they're brought before the king and basically brought in by these astrologers. And the king basically asked him and said, is it true? Is it true that you that you won't fall down and worship? And they basically said to him, we're not going to have to defend ourselves on this one, all right? And he says, basically, yeah, it is true that we are not going to fall down and worship. He says, you know what? You can throw us in the fire, basically, but our God's able to save us, and he will save us. But then they go on to say this, but even if he doesn't save us from death by you throwing us in this fiery furnace, let it be known, we're not going to fall down and worship any god. We're not going to worship your statue or your false gods. Well, King got mad. He got furious. And then all of a sudden, once he got furious, he ordered the fire to be stoked 7 times greater. He ordered them to be bound up with their coats and all this stuff on. And he got really strong soldiers. And he told him, he says, throw these men into the fire. Well, when they brought him up, now the fire pit, or the furnace was probably down off a little bit of a hillside, okay? And the Bible says the fire was so hot and it was so quick that he wanted this done, that it killed the men that had bound them and was going to throw them in the fire. And the Bible says they fell into the fiery furnace. Well, then all of a sudden the king looked up and he said, wow, look at this. He said, didn't I order 3 men bound and thrown in the fire? And they said, yes, you did. And he said, but there's 4 men walking around now. So all of a sudden they're looking, and he said, the 4th one looks like the Son of God. Well, then he ordered them to be brought out. He said, they're walking around unbound, and he calls for them. He goes to the mouth of the furnace and says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out here, come here. And they did. And all of these governors and all these people, all of these leaders gathered around them. And what they noticed was there was not a hair on their heads that was sins. There's nothing that had actually done to them. They had been thrown in the fire, and the only thing that got burned up was what bounded them. But they made a decision not to worship that beast, not to worship that statue, not to worship that image that King Nebuchadnezzar had been put in there. And he was amazed because once they were pulled out of the fire, they didn't smell like they had fire on them. Their clothes were not burnt. Their hair was not singed. You couldn't even tell they'd been in a fire, even though it had killed those strong men that that was going to throw them in there. And then the king made a proclamation. He said, if anybody says anything against the God of these men, the God of these men, you know, may their houses be destroyed, their family be destroyed, and so on and so forth, and may they be put to death. And you know what he did after that? He promoted them to a much higher position. Okay, that's the children's version of this. But I'm telling you, there's a very scary underline of this. Are you strong enough today, if they made a proclamation that says you cannot worship anymore, you cannot do this anymore, you can't do that, but we're going to make a new religion, you're going to fall down to it? Are you strong to say, you know what, no, I'm not? This is what this story is about. It's a story about faith and having faith in God. Daniel chapter 3 leads us to the point where we see that in the future it's going to happen again. A statue is going to be made. There's going to be one world religion. Satan's going to have full reign. The Antichrist is going to order people. The false prophet is going to order people to be put to death. They don't worship this image that he has, whatever image that is. I don't know what it is. If they don't worship Satan, if they don't worship the Antichrist, they're going to be put to death. That's the reason why they want a world religion, but it excludes Christianity, because Christians know we worship the true God. And there is only one true God. You can't join it with other religions. So my prayer for you today is simply this, okay? Stay with me on Daniel. We'll get in chapter 4 tomorrow. There's some neat things happening. Then we're going to get into some future events of things that's going to come out. Some of it's still history we'll be talking about. But I just want to say, God bless you. Have a great day. Get out and enjoy this weather today. Do something. Get outside and just enjoy. Breathe in God's air. This is Brother Perry. May God bless you today.